Hey everyone, welcome back to devlog 2 for Kynetic. If you'd like an overview of what Kynetic is, I'd recommend you check out the first devlog, or you can find the link to the repository in the pinned comment. The main thing I worked on this week was writing the actual renderer code itself. Up until now, most of the effort had gone into defining schemas, drawables, and making sure the contract between the front end and the back end was solid. Now there's finally a concrete rendering path that takes validated JSON and drives the render process end to end. At a high level, the renderer is responsible for loading the scene description, instantiating drawables, applying animation deterministically over time, and producing the final frames that get encoded into an MP4 using handanim. The core idea is that the JSON document is first parsed and compiled into a set of drawables and events, and only then is the scene constructed and populated with nodes. This keeps the rendering step itself simple, predictable, and easy to reason about. Once that core renderer logic was in place, the next step was containerization. The renderer is now fully Dockerized, with a clean and reproducible environment that includes all of the Python dependencies and rendering tooling it needs, including things like ffmpeg and Cairo. I've also pushed the image to Docker Hub, which makes it much easier to deploy and test across different environments without worrying about local setup differences. This ties directly into one of the bigger goals of Kynetic, which is bring your own compute. Rather than locking people into a specific managed service, the idea is that the renderer can run wherever it makes sense for you, locally, on your own server, or in the cloud via something like ECS, all using the same container image. On that note, I've also started drawing out a basic AWS architecture for a BYOC setup. For uploading images to the editor, the plan is to use an S3 bucket to store assets and their associated metadata. A Lambda function would generate pre-signed URLs to allow secure get and put operations, with everything exposed through an API gateway. For now, this is still just a plan, but the next step will be turning it into an actual infrastructure template. I was originally leaning towards SAM, but I'm now planning to use CDK instead, as it's much more approachable for developers and avoid cluttering the repository with large, messy YAML files. There is currently one known limitation with the renderer right now that needs fixing. At the moment, it only supports local assets, meaning things like SVGs or images have to be available from the container at render time. It doesn't yet support fetching remote assets, for example from S3. That's a pretty important missing feature, especially for Kynetic's cloud-first workflow, and it's the next thing on the list to implement. That's pretty much it for this update. Progress this week was all about infrastructure, reliability, and testing up the groundwork for scaling the system properly. As always, if you're interested in whiteboard style animation, deterministic rendering, or bring your own cloud pipelines, there's more coming soon.